You listen to that submission by Don Pedro Obaseki. That's, of course, how he sees it, you know, from his own lens, the zoning arrangements in the PDP since 1999. And, of course, he drew a conclusion. What do you make of the conclusion that he arrived at?
Evidently, facts don't lie. He based his conclusion on statistical data. And so it is understandable that his presentation gives us a very wide scope to appreciate what it takes to be within the PDP family and how the structure of the primaries should be as it relates to the 2023 election. Ordinarily, I'm a student of competitive politics. 2, I come from Nasarawa State but grew up outside Nasarawa State. I went to University of Ibadan, and we were among those that installed the first non-Yoruba president of the student union, the former president of Ohanes Ndigbo, John Nwodo, who were schoolmates in UI. And so you can understand my disposition. However, I also participated in the 1995-96 constitution that presently is the arrangement that we have today, respecting the fundamentals of Nigerian as a country. And our own presumption when the constitution was crafted is that each zone will be given the opportunity of producing a president once, 2 terms, whatever it is. And by the time it goes around the country on a one-off basis, then the system will be thrown into the issue of the best candidate counts. That is the presumptive reasoning of those who crafted the constitution in 1995-96. The facts as presented clearly, on a generic sense, means the North has had 4 years less number of years as president of this country, joining both the APC and PDP years in power. And so there is a request for compensatory measures to see that this distortion of facts is corrected. And the only way you do it is to also zone it to the North, but presumptively to the place that has never done it before. There are 2 states, two zones that are disadvantaged in the present disposition: the North Central and the Southeast. North Central has never produced a vice presidential candidate, nor has it produced a presidential candidate. The Southeast, you will say, has produced a vice presidential candidate in the late Alex Ekweme. But in this current dispensation, they have not. And so these are the 2 zones that are in contention. But there's also the issues of numbers that come into play. And so this is where zoning comes into contention, because you must do zoning to respect the size of the membership of the Nigerian Federation. Size in terms of big population or in terms of small population, so that the people who are small will also feel a sense of original belonging without having a feeling of being left unattended to. That is why zoning has become a very rife perspective for assessing participation at that level of executive decision making. I think this is where we are. And if that is the case, if you don't do it that way in terms of consideration of those facts, the East will continuously be in a disadvantage. There are 5 states, the delegate structure does not favor them, and all that stuff. And so, as a country, we owe ourselves an obligation to have a spindle that will control the way power shifts from place to place. But it also envisages that the leadership structure will develop from people who have established structures across the country. So there seems to be a deficit in some of these placement of people, that they have not been able to have a pan-Nigeria structural arrangement that automatically gives them value for their request for power. That is how I see it.
All right, Dimeji, this debate of zoning, you know, either way it goes, there seems to be merit wherever the pendulum swings. He has made mention of the Southeast never having a chance, not had a chance yet, the North Central, but so also is the Northeast.
They have had a vice president. That's
yes, but has had a vice president. First of all, where do you stand in this zoning arrangement, to be or not to be?
Well, thank you very much. I would like to limit myself to what my party, PDP, has to do, you know. And then, yes, we have a country, and we have to consider so many things as a federal country. But this is democracy, this is politics. Political parties play a key role. And what happens, whatever happens to the political party, has a larger effect on the generality of Nigerians. So as far as I know, I like to limit myself to what my party has to do or what it's doing. As far as I know, the issue of zoning shouldn't have taken us to this point. It has actually, you know, tampered with the focus of the leadership of the party. And I say this because, one, the party considers it very important to do, and the leadership considers it very important to do. I don't blame them. They are the leadership. But I am one of those who do not believe that the committee they set up should have been in place in the first instance.
Why so?
It's needless. It's not necessary. One, because of the time. If you really want to do a proper job, this zoning thing should have been set up 2-3 months ago or 4 months ago to have gone around the country and feel the pulse of the people. But in a situation where you bring 37 people together to say, go and decide on this, well, I give it to them. We'll await what the outcome of that committee will bring. But as far as I know, there's no time on our side. That's number one. Number two, we have lots of people that have been going around campaigning to want to be president. So when you bring in zoning 5 weeks to primary election, honestly, trust me, it's going to put our party in a weak position going into the general election. That's number one. Number two, zoning. Let's look at some of these fundamentals. Zoning limits our ability to elect an experienced person who has experience to really help this country to achieve its full potential. Zoning limits our ability to elect a person who has the right solution. Look at what happened on Abuja Rail Card, the terrorists. We need someone with an experience to really do that. But zoning will limit us from achieving that. Again, zoning will continue to divide us as a country. Number four, which is most critical, zoning would limit our ability to get someone who can actually unite this country in the face of what we are going as a nation now. We need somebody who can unite the country, who has the capacity to bring us together as one people, as one country, and with one future. So it's only as one we can do this. So we shouldn't run away from that.
What about the fairness zoning seems to bring?
There's fairness in everything we do.
How so?
You don't, as a party, that's why I said I want to leave myself to what my party has to do.
Yes,
my party
I'm thinking also
and
to
the
your
rule
party.
has justified. The rule has provided a justification for fairness, and that is why you look at the constitution of the party that talks about rotation, zone by zone every 8 years. I remember in 2017, this same party sat down and said you should go to the north. When you look at the analysis you just played, I'm just seeing this for the first time. It has settled it. So going into all this conversation, as far as I know, is most needless. And we have to be careful as a party if truly we want to take over the reign of this government from the inept government of APC.
So your suggestion is that the party should throw the primaries open for everyone
because
to
now
contest.
my leader here just mentioned about zones that have not produced the president. We have the northeast, we have the southeast. According to him, he said North Central is still part of it. So when we have this situation and there seems not to be a common ground, the best thing for a reasonable, responsible party to do is to throw it open and see, if I run an election with you and you prevent me from running, it's going to create a bad blood. But let me go to the field and lose.
Right.
When I lose and I lose fairly, there won't be any problem.
Right.
So the party must also be careful of allowing our members, our aspirants, because a lot of them have supporters, that at the end of the day, we'll go into election from a weak point.
Mr. Ewuga, listening, very attentively to the submission of Don Pedro Obaseki in that package, he did, of course, say that the zoning arrangement within the People's Democratic Party seem to have favored the South, and there is need to address this disparity going forward. By May 29, 2023, the North, would have done 8 years in office. That was since 2015. What do you think, would be fair and would be in the interest of Nigerians?
Every value judgment has a subjective reasoning. I'm from the North Central, and I feel disadvantaged already and would want the zoning to favor me. Anybody across the North Central. There is also the equitable dispensation. So in my mind, sometimes I feel the president should come from the Southeast. That is a sense of equity. They're two different things.
Did the PDP factor in micro zoning when it came up with this arrangement in 1999?
Whatever it is, the point about it is the issue of zoning was meant to accommodate the weak and the strong. That is the whole idea. Okay, let us use a rule of thumb to see that everybody has a taste of the bite. I think that is what it is. Whether it was factored as an existential reality or it was just made as a dispensation so that they can start from somewhere. The point about it is that it has become an issue which cannot be wished away. Oladimeji is definitely in the throes of those who want competition to produce the best.
Is that a bad thing?
Hmm?
That isn't a bad thing, is it?
No, let me add what I want to say. I want a very strong leader because I tell you, when you get to information on some of the things happening with respect to the weak security architecture in the country, we need a strong leader to really have a deeper foundation on how the security can be managed. That is my own position. And Oladimeji mentioned it, that we need a strong leader in following this present dispensation, because things are now getting into Somalia. If the mass transport system is being attacked the way the train was attacked day before yesterday. And so I would suggest that in trying to manage Nigeria for 2023, we need a very strong, determined leadership who will enforce capacity. And then the issue of zoning can now be kept in view for future referencing. But the second thing too is that there are strong leaders in these zones that can manage in this country, in the zones that have not provided, who can come up and look at this country with the strength they have. I am not going to be in a backing situation where I'm concerned that a zoning committee has been put in place. That would be like complaining that they are already there. But the point remains that when the present leadership of the PDP came up, one of the decisions taken was that zoning should be left unattended to and the ticket should be open for election for the Congress and for the election in 2023. But you know, everybody, I'm not in leadership, I'm just a follower, and so I may be a stakeholder in terms of value judgment, but there is a limit to what the tendency is to watch how these will evolve into constructive reasoning, so that at the end of it all, the choice of the party will create a formation that will allow them a taste of power. Don't forget, we are still looking at the fact that APC is a sitting government. And so they have zoned it to the south. Where it goes to the south may be to the same place where power had already located. That power had my boss, OBJ, for 8 years. It has had a vice president for 8 years. And now another president for 8 years. So if they leave it to go in that manner, definitely there is no reason why somebody in the Northwest, in PDP, will not want to be thought of, given the fact that the Northwest had all the desired advantages so far.
Well, Mr. Ewuga said that this is a very complex issue, yet somehow it still looks very simple. Like you said earlier, it is what the decision that your party eventually makes that matters, and what that decision should be a decision that will give your party, you know, a winning chance in the 2023 presidential election. How can your party take on all of these dissenting voices and, you know, find a way, find a middle ground, or at least be able to come up with something that will be beneficial and fair to all?
Well, well, it's very simple. The new leadership of the party has a role to play, and then the best they can do is to ensure that all participants from wherever across the country can say, okay, I've been treated fairly. And it's simple. It's a decision of the leadership to do that. They are leading us. We are watching them. We're following them. But where we feel that they have taken a decision that will not help the party, we will not fail to tell them. See, for a change, let us zone. If we must zone, let us zone to experience. For a change, if we must zone, let us zone to capacity. Let us zone to performance. Let us zone to unity of this country. It's very, very key. Where we are now, we cannot afford to joke or gamble if PDP truly wants to return to power. So let us zone to unity of this country. And that will mean getting someone whom we know or we understand that the entire zone of this country will be comfortable with his candidature. That is what we need.
Lakbiji, can we at this point in time as a country afford to play the politics of merit and competitiveness as you are suggesting, considering the fact that we are so sensitive, you know, to our tribes, to our religion, and in fact virtually every part of this country at this time feels so entitled, you know, to the presidency?
Let me tell you, we need to drop all this sentiment first to have a country. If we don't have a country, all these sentiments will not take us anywhere. We drop every sentiment and look at how we can achieve, how we can have somebody who can unite this country, with requisite experience to get the country back. We have seen what the APC government has done. We have seen where they led us as a country. So the PDP should not and should never make an attempt to play the card of APC. APC is trying to zone us, and we should not allow that. They're trying to zone PDP to what they want. Don't give them victory at the election. We must not. We must resist that. And I'm hoping the leadership of the party is listening this morning. His Excellency has made it bare on the table. We do not have that time. We do not have the luxury of time to gamble, to play with words or any sentiment at this time of the day, except PDP is not ready to take over leadership of this country. So we must run away from all this sentiment. We must look for performance. We must work for experience. We must look for capacity. We must look for somebody who can take this country to the next level. For a change, let us zone to all these values. That's what we need now.
All right, Mr. Ewuga, you are a politician with many years of experience, having been the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory and also a former governor of Deputy Governor, I beg your pardon. Maybe I'm promoting you this morning. All right, former Deputy Governor of Nasarawa State. You must have a thought, an opinion, exactly what you think your party should be doing at this point, because you both have agreed that the time is short for PDP to make any mistake. And this is not the time to make any mistakes for this party that has been in opposition now for 8 years. What, for you, will be the best decision and the way forward for your party?
First, let's have a strong leadership that will unite this country and give us confidence. In giving us confidence to be both economic and political and social. Economic in the sense that a strong leadership will give investors confidence for increased foreign direct investment, FDIs. Politically, people will not have any element of deficit of relationship across boundaries, because differences turn to manifest. The language in the present dispensation talk more about the differences than about the commonality of relationship. Religious difficulties tend to manifest, and the language nowadays talks about nepotistic orientation and all those things. And these are the fears that govern our understanding of the country. The issue of insecurity. As a younger fellow, when I schooled in UI, we used to travel by road from Kaduna. It didn't matter what time we left. Sometimes we went by air. It was 15 naira from Jos to Ibadan. Sometimes we went by road from Jos to Ibadan that time. So there was no element. When I started my personal life in 1982, I used to travel, leave Jos at 4 a.m., never bothering that there was a problem of insecurity, and I will arrive back at any time. We used to travel. I was in MPN. We would leave and head for Lagos. Leave just at 2 a.m. Never worrying that you are going to be threatened by armed robbery or kidnapping. But those discretionary attitudes are gone. So we need a leadership that can. So the next dispensation must be under a very strong leader who is capacitated.
Some people, Senator Ewuga, believe that the PDP made a huge mistake, you know, in looking the way of the South in 2015 after the 8 years of former President Olusegun Obasanjo and, of course, the 2 years of the late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. And they felt that if the party had decided otherwise, perhaps the PDP would have still remained in power. I don't know if you share, you know, that view. And the popular opinion now, or what looks like the popular opinion at this time, is for the PDP to zone to the north. Is that a way of rectifying what looks like a huge mistake in 2015?
Wherever power locates to, those ingredients of capacity must be taken into value. You must have a strong president who is alive to deficiencies that have already been listed in our everyday narrative. You just need it, without which this country is going to collapse at its own totals. We are going the way of Somalia with the attack on the train in day before yesterday, a few days ago. So if that is what we are going to do, then we as a country must begin to take responsibility for the way we manage it. But having said that, my strongest take is beyond any other thing, I need a safe country. I need a safe country. The other side of it is the attitude of the southern governors. They have formed a union of voices that if the presidency is not zoned to the south, they will team up in one direction where the ticket may go. I have not seen that as being manifest yet. But supposing it does happen, will that mean that the North will act in unison? So we are talking about two parties right now. One in power, the other one not in power. The one currently in power took away governance from those that were in power. So these things might be. But let me also end by saying this. There are key stakeholders who, quote unquote, own the levers of the way this country goes. We are also talking to them. This program is directed at them. That look, it's a complex scenario, but you, our elders who have the levers of this country, please let us understand that in the choices you make, give us a strong country. Because even in the twilight of your lives, you have a responsibility to live first and establish a legacy. Then you will continuously be a relevant phenomenon in the history of a country. The U.S. today talks about George Washington giving Washington, D.C. and then the state of Washington because of the legacy left behind by the first president, who was a general who brought about the unification of the country, George Washington. So let us also have, so we are also talking to those who have experienced power, but who manage the levers of the country. We're also talking about to the present leadership. We're also conditioning the present psyche of the Nigerian population to understand that it is not going to be a simple decision. And Nigerians will now begin to dispose themselves, finally.
All right.
The electoral laws energizes the Nigerian community. Yeah. Electoral laws energizes the Nigerians to make an appropriate choice that will reflect the qualities that we have enumerated as a strength to our system.
A very big thank you to you, member of a PDP. We've been talking about the zoning formula in People's Democratic Party, PDP. Fortunately, we cannot. I'm sorry. We cannot. We have another segment to launch.
One last statement.
Okay, one sentence.
Sorry, I just have a message.
Not a minute.
For the zoning committee. They must do it in the interest of the people of People's Democratic Party and in the larger interest of Nigeria. It's very, very important.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.